Hi and welcome back to Spirit Lounge. Hope you guys are doing well, and to the next installment, part 2 of the Pali section we're going into, which is the Sutta Pitaka and the Digha Nikaya section, and this is the Maha Vaga section of that subsection of that set of teachings. There's lots of different subsections, so it kind of confuses me a little bit. So let's get straight into it. Okay, bring it up into the screen. So this is going into the Sutta Pitaka, and the subsection of that is the Digha Nikaya, and the Vaga is one of the subsections within there. And there are a number of Vaga sections, and this is the second to last one we'll be covering. As I said, the Sutta Pitaka itself it contains all the dhamma, which are the teachings of Buddha, of our Buddhist faith. And the Pali is one of the earliest writings, the Pali Canon, one of the earliest writings of the Buddhist faith, and it's translated into English. And it's contained into 5 collections, which are nikayas. So this is called the Sutta Pitaka Digha Nikaya, which is one of the 5 collections. And the other 5 are the Majjhima, the Samyutta, the Anguttara, and the Kuddaka Nikaya, which we'll also be traversing through. And it contains everything that they know about Buddhist teachings. It means Tipitaka means 3 baskets, meaning 3 sections of the Buddhist Canon, which is Suta, and the other 2 Pitakas, the Vinyana and Abhidhamma. The Suttas themselves are building blocks within the Vagas themselves, contain many suttas. So the Vagas themselves are subsections, which in turn contain many suttas, which are building blocks, if you like, bricks to that particular Vaga. Within each Vaga are building blocks to each of the Nikayas, and the Nikayas are then the primary 5 building blocks of the Sutta Pitaka, and therefore the Tipitaka itself. And so there's here the Sutta Pitaka contains all the Dhamma teachings, and the Digha Nikaya is a collection. So Nikaya is a long set of sermons, which are Digha, and discourses of Buddha. So the long sermons are the Digha Nikaya. 3 sections, the Vagas, which we have gone through. We're going through one of the second to last Vaga today. This is the Maha Vaga, which we're going to go through today, which talks about controlling thoughts and the mind. Okay. The Maha Vaga, the Mahapadana Sutta, which is a subsection, is on the lives of 6 past Buddhas. The life of the 7th Buddha, which is the current one, Vayoasi Buddha, Sikhi Buddha, Vesaba Buddha, Kakusando Buddha, Konokomano Buddha, and the Kassapa Buddha, and the Gautama Buddha. The latest, obviously, there is the one after that. So this is the Vasani the first, the Sikhi the second, Vasabu the third, Kakusando the fourth, Konogamano Buddha the 5th, and the Kassapo Buddha the 6th, and the Gautama Buddha is the 7th. And so time and the age, or an eon, of the Buddhas is a social rank and family name and lifespan. Name of the tree in which enlightenment was attained, which is the banyan tree, on the 32 marks of a great man. Remember those 32 marks of a great man on the previous video, which were describing 32 aspects of what Buddha would have looked like. It was described, those aspects were how they looked at the Buddha's form and described it in 32 aspects, and that's how they described a perfect being to be. Of a great man, all found upon a Buddha's body. So see previous text in the previous video. Buddha became aware of his past lives through his enlightenment and the development of his doctrine. What does this mean, the enlightenment? This means the opening and unveiling of information and knowing. This also means opening up our psychical and mystical aspects of ourselves, our heightening in intuition, and moves into psychical and mediumship aspects. This is how you open those up. The enlightenment opens you up to greater knowledge, greater knowing, greater perception. Greater perception is the opening up of your intuitive, your psychical self. but not staying in the psychical occultic realm, but using those aspects to move further and further from the left to the right. We find in this root, in the root Birana weed, spreading gradually covered up much of what was the value of the earlier teaching. So they're talking about the earlier teaching was masked by other doctrines which are overlaid upon it. The doctrine of the Bodhisattva, of the wisdom being, drove out the doctrine of the Aryan path. A gorgeous hierarchy of mythological wonder works filled men's minds, and the older system of self-restraint and self-control became forgotten. So what they're saying here is that the early Pali doctrine, which is what this video series is about, is be covering, was actually driven out by other doctrines, other diluted doctrines that came in and covered up the original doctrine of the Aryan path, which is true for many religions and faiths. If you think about it, the original writings were either taken literally or allegorically, or in other ways, more indicating a message, and rather than being taken literally, it was just a message that needed to be translated completely differently, to be read completely differently. And they're all been changed. Every rewrite of every religious text, every faith, every doctrine, every occult or metaphysical text is rewritten, depending on the interpretation of that person or those who rewrite it. The Mahanidana Sutta, on causation, on birth the cause of decay and death, on becoming the cause of birth, on clinging the cause of becoming, on craving is the cause of clinging. So what they're talking about here is the cause is rebirth, which goes into decay and death. So you're born and then you decay over life and then you die. This is not just physically. This is talking about spiritual decay also. On becoming, the cause of birth. So what is becoming? They're saying becoming is clinging. What is clinging? Clinging is clinging to the material, to the matter being, to the ego being, to the occult being, to the technological worship, the worship of ego, of ourselves, our mind, our perceptions, our five senses, our bodies, our desire-driven aspects of ourselves. That which is all material and moves us towards the left is what's called clinging. Clinging to the material world and attachment to it is the cause of becoming. The cause of becoming is the cause of birth, i.e. reincarnation, which then causes the cycle of decay and death. On craving, which is the cause of clinging, so this is craving in the material sense. On feelings, which are sensations, which is one aspect of the cause of craving. So we feel the need for things. We have the attachment of feeling, of emotive feeling, to sensation, to an understanding on wanting to feel physical or sexual or mental sensation, which is a craving itself, which is then attached to a clinging. On contact is the cause of feeling. So you've touched things and then you have a cause of feeling which comes from it. On mind and body is the cause of contact. So you have what causes a contact? Well, it's the physical body, which is the cause of the contact. It's reversing itself. On consciousness, which is cognition, is a cause of mind and body, name and form. So become aware of ourselves in our bodies, having feeling through touch and sensation, which goes on to clinging, which reverses itself into the cause of birth, into the cause of decay and death in birth, which is the causation and the cycle of reincarnation itself. And why the Buddhist teachings say this is what reincarnation cycle is really about. I disagree with that. It's an aspect, it's one petal of a lotus flower which needs to be unfurled. Attachment is one petal, not the only petal. It's not the only causation for which and why we return, or why we choose to return, rather. And it says on how the ultimate effect of all of these causes is suffering. It says suffering. Suffering is, the Buddhist text from what I'm reading is causing the birth cycle, the reincarnation cycle is regarded as suffering, is regarded as punishment. If one is not releasing oneself from that karmic cycle of rebirth, it's called suffering. When dropping into the material realm and then experiencing clinging, which is attachment to the physical and detachment from the spiritual and godlessness, is cause of suffering. which is true. The cause of all suffering is ultimately, and the distance to suffering ultimately is the distance to the divine itself. On the four theories of the soul, and it goes on to say, a soul with form and inert and is small, a soul with form and is boundless, a soul without form but very small. So it's saying there's four aspects of a soul. It can be a soul with form and is very small, a soul with form and which is boundless, a soul without form but is also very small, and a soul without form and is boundless. Well, which one of those is it? It's asking you a question there. I would say if it was closest to anything, it would be the last passage. The soul is really your expression. Remember, the soul is not the spirit. The spirit of grace of our Divine Father origin is pure. It cannot be tainted, it cannot be captured, it cannot be imprisoned, it cannot be diverted, it cannot be polluted, it cannot be soiled. It is pure. It is the breath of the divine within everything that exists, animate or inanimate, conscious of itself. Everything's aware and conscious of itself. Animate, inanimate contains the breath of spirit. However, the soul is your expression of life. Your soul is the garment in which you wear, entering the material realm or the cosmos or the sphere of experience or matter or the materium, whichever you wish to call it, is your soul. It's your garment. It's the thing that you pass through, and the body is the vessel in which you exhibit to interact with the physical world. But the soul is your expression, is the culmination of everything you've become to that point in infinite life, infinite creation, eternity. It's your vessel. Your vessel is your vehicle. Your soul is your expression. It's every action, every word, every thought, every intention, everything that you have become today creates the image and the vibration of your soul. A soul can move towards the spirit in which it becomes translucent, it becomes purer, it becomes more divine. Your soul expression becomes more of grace. That which moves towards the left or the material or the occult, the soul is thick, it is dark, it is polluted, it is soiled, it is heavy. You cannot see anything through it. It only looks at ego and possession and oppression and suppression and death and destruction and occult and abuse. And then you go into satanic and Luciferian and pedophilic things, which is where the soul has totally given itself away to false gods. So the soul expression can be two spectrums and everything in between. And the reason we incarnate is because our soul has not transcended away from the material form of man, of humanity, in the third dimensional sphere of vibration. So therefore our souls, if we're on this planet and you're watching this, even me completing this, having these videos and going live, is the same aspect. We're looking to move our soul towards a spirit, to then remove ourselves from what we call the cycle of rebirth, which is the same in Hinduism as in Buddhism. This is what Buddha is talking about. Ultimately, he's saying the attachment is ultimately where we are and why it keeps you here, and this is what causes all these aspects of suffering. But that is what's really causing it underneath all of that. The ultimate expression of that is the vibration and illumination of your soul or not. And that is really your choice. That is your responsibility. It will only become what you allow it to become. So there is no one to blame. This system of this world will always drive your soul towards the left, towards matter, towards being, towards mind, to the worship of self, worship of white coats, people with prefixes and suffixes after their names, governments and powers and obsessions and lust, and worship of technology over all things, the dismissal of grace and dismissal of the very existence of our divine origin, which is where it will move you. That will also soil the soul. So if you're watching this video or any of my videos, it means you're on the passage to moving your soul towards a spirit, which means your transcendental path and your nature and your passage is set. As long as you keep walking on it, the path will be illuminated for you. So it says, on the soul not feeling happiness, pain, or if the soul is not feeling happiness, pain, or is neutral, on the seven spheres of consciousness where beings are. So it says they have different bodies, different bodies and different. They have different bodies and different intelligence. They have different bodies and same intelligence. They have the same bodies but different intelligence. They have same bodies but the same intelligence. Beings dwell in spheres of infinite space. Beings dwell in spheres of infinite cognition. Beings dwell in spheres of nothingness. This is actually a movement. So this is talking about movement to the single source itself. So we walk through this. There are many humans of different bodies and different intelligence. So apologies, intelligence missing off the first line. Differentiation. Everyone's on different bodies, of course, but different intelligence. What is intelligence talking about? It's not talking about mental intelligence or education or memory. It's not even talking about intellect. It's talking about spiritual intelligence. And then it's talking about different bodies and same intelligence. So it's talking about the merging and moving towards, for me, different vessels, the same movement towards spirit. Then it talks about same bodies and different intelligence. What does this mean? Well, this is talking about, for me, a variation of movement of spiritual, but the vessel is the detachment from the vessel, and saying the body is actually the spirit. It's talking about going into the spirit, moving the intelligence into the spirit, but moving into that spirit is also meaning that there is again a separation, a differentiation into our understanding of spiritual and cosmic intelligence as each person moves into the spirit, which is ultimately the holy land that we seek is the divine spiritual breath inside. That is the holy land. There is no holy land on this earth. There is no physical land which is holy. The holy land you seek is the spirit, the breath of God inside you, which you're seeking. That is your holy land. This is what I would regard as the body, the true body. The true intelligence is spiritual intelligence. The true body is the spirit. And then it's talking about same bodies and same intelligence. This is the conversion of the coalescing of the spirit into the true body of the soul, and in spiritual intelligence into the true body of the spirit. This is the same body and the same intelligence. What happens then? Well, you start to dwell into a different state of awareness, perception, which is the infinite state of perception, not the material or the world or the human constricted, egotistic realm of infinite of space. You're in the infinite realm. You start to move your spirit, your intelligence, your knowing, your unveiling of the petals of the lotus flower, unveil themselves out as you synchronize and coalesce with the spirit body, and then you're into the infinite space. You start to develop infinite cognition. Then you start to develop the sphere of nothingness, as I've mentioned before. The two state of grace actually has the nothing in it. It's a space of pure bliss and love, but belonging. There's nothing actually there. It exists as soon as you put a thought to it. It will exist. But it actually has nothing there. There's nothing in grace other than love. All possibility, infinite possibility, probability. It's the inevitability of possibility and probability that exists in the true state of our divine origin, of our divine Father has. It's really a nothingness of everything that could possibly be, could never be, and may never be. Every possibility, every probability exists in an instant of thought. That is really where it is. That is where the true destination of our understanding and knowing is going to be. I feel that as soon as we move towards number 4, we start to integrate ourselves into the spirit of our divine intelligence, and our soul moves into coalescing with the spiritual body. We move away from this realm. The incarnational cycle into matter no longer has purpose, no longer significance. Your vibration frequency leaves it. Therefore, this causation that Buddha is talking about here is dispelled. It no longer exists. Then you move into different states of being, different states of form, of non-material matter form, energy, consciousness, awareness, energy form. In this universe, you still enter into the cosmos of experience to divine and expand out into infinite space, and then further into infinite cognition, and then ultimately into nothingness, which for me is returning to grace entirely and becoming a complete and whole being, reflecting and mirroring the breath of God entirely. This is what we call returning to grace completely. Okay, on the spheres where beings have no consciousness, where beings do not lack consciousness and do not have consciousness. So there is, this is again the states of awareness. On the spheres where beings have no consciousness, this is divine consciousness, this is the material and left-leaning matter realm, where beings do not lack consciousness, where there is remember this is the opening of a divine intelligence, and do not have consciousness. On how those dwelling in the 9 spheres have no idea what sphere they're in, how space came to be. So these are the 9 spheres we talked about before. Let's go back to the previous one. These are the 9 spheres. I'll have to bring those up because it mentions a lot of. Some of this is in later passages. Apologies for that. So the 9 spheres is talking about here have no on the spheres of consciousness, which are the 9 spheres. They have no idea what sphere they're in and how space came to be. This is really talking about here for me. States of consciousness, states of awareness. If you're in the sphere, a lower sphere, for example, sphere 1, 2, 3, this is really talking about matter-based spheres of perception of awareness. And from on those grades of sphere 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 even, you have only awareness of self, of the body, of the senses, of the mind, of intellectualism, of virtue signaling and self-righteousness. These will move you away from really understanding why you're in a sphere, that you're even in a sphere, and how that space came to be. But as you move up into the spheres of awareness and consciousness, as you move through these 7 stages of 7 spheres of consciousness, you start to develop further and further out, and then you understand how space came to be. On the 8 states of deliverance, what are they? They are seeing the forms of self, seeing forms external to self. Again, this is a progressive passage. The state of intention. This is the intention to expand. The sphere of infinite space. The sphere of infinite cognition. Remember, this also mirrors the 7 spheres. Very similarly, the sphere of nothingness. And then you move to the sphere of neither consciousness not lack consciousness, and the final stage of suspended contact and sensation. So this is effectively saying moving into the sphere of nothingness, which then eliminates either consciousness or not consciousness, because consciousness is something we've named within our form. This is how we describe something greater than our mind. But in the sphere of nothingness, there is no consciousness. And there's no lack of consciousness, because you are merged into the one. You are complete and utter divine awareness, merging into the eternity of infiniteness. So there's no consciousness, but there also is no lack of consciousness, because there's much what is there is beyond what we can ever describe as consciousness. And the final state is the suspension of contact and sensation. Of course, there's no physical contact, there's no sensation. So what the Buddhist Pali is talking about here is that we remove the clinging to contact and sensation has disappeared. Okay, Buddha's advice is to purify themselves through the cultivation of wisdom, virtue, and concentration. Could not be argued. This is paramount and ubiquitous across all faith, all metaphysical or occultic practices. And the only one that really matters is the moving on to the Divine Father, of course, which is cultivating wisdom, virtue, and concentration. This is not virtue, mind, ego virtue signaling. This is concentration on moving oneself beyond one's material self, beyond one's mind, and creating spiritual virtue and divine wisdom. The 5 perils of an immoral life, as described here, are the loss of wealth through laziness, a bad reputation, a confused upon dying and rebirth into increased suffering. So this is what he's talking about, the 5 perils of an immoral life. This is what would occur to you if you have an immoral life. Not necessarily the case. This is, if you can see, a lot of people live immoral lives but seem to have immense amounts of wealth, have false good reputations. They're not confused about dying or rebirth or increased suffering into recycled rebirth, because they cling onto matter and they wish only to extend life and increase life, and not just rebirth, but increase their longevity in their lives and dominate it. So this is from a very spiritual Buddhist perspective, but in reality the world and those that we occupy this world with and share it with are achieve the opposite of all these things by performing and seeking all of these things. On the 5 benefits of a moral life, there would be wealth, increased suffering. Wealth, increased suffering. On the 5 benefits of a moral life is wealth through good effort, good reputation, confidence in all company, a peaceful death, and rebirth into heaven. Well, we all are rebirthed into our divine source realm, from that which we choose to return for our purposes of expansion, experience, expansion. Ultimately, that's really what it is to cleanse the soul, is to purify our souls. And a peaceful death, what is that? Well, that is one where one is connected with the divine throughout life, and therefore the transition to death isn't painful or through illness or suffering. It is in peace and in silence, in sleep. And one that is taken through a willful free will decision consciously, and not done through the ignorance of looking after oneself physically, mentally, emotionally. By not understanding the 4 noble truths, long was the path through my lifetimes. When understanding comes, the cause of rebirth is removed. This is what it's talking about, is wisdom, divine knowing. Knowing is divine. Once understanding comes, which is divine wisdom. Wisdom is divine knowledge, accompanied by the coalescing of the soul and the heart into the spirit, with the mind being the vessel of translation and processing of that knowing. And through that, you remove through the cycle of rebirth. The root of suffering is pulled up from its roots, and there are no more births. The primary vehicle for merit making to be virtue filled. On monks with the mirror of truth being certain to attain enlightenment. Okay, and Buddha's mastery of the 4 paths to spiritual power. So this is Buddha's passage to spiritual power. One is concentration, which is samadhi, which is concentrating, meditation, if you like, on intention or purpose or desire or zeal, which is chanda, which is talking about what's your intention, what's your purpose, what is your desire, what is your zeal. Is it spiritual zeal? Is it spiritual desire, purpose and intention, or is it material? Is it matter-based? Is it going towards the left, which is ultimate, the very extreme left, is Satanism, is false gods, is Baal, is Moloch, is all of this sacrificial pedophilia which exists so rife in this world and actually runs a lot of the powers in this world. Is it that, or is it the right where the soul is looking to purify, or is it lost in the middle? Or is it moving into the psychical and mediumship realm, or the new age, where you get stuck into paradigms of self-created complexity which does not exist? The divine will show you the path and lay it out to you. All you need to do is ask and pray and be grateful and give gratitude and wait for the passage to be unfurled with humility. And that it will be unfurled. It will take you on the passage if you truly, truly, truly ask and truly want it in your soul and in your heart. Effort or energy or will, again, it can go both ways. Move energy, will, and desire as a transcendental practice, as Mahanji says on every one of my videos. I finish off with this. It cannot be a virtuous act. It has to be a life transformation. Consciousness or mind or thoughts, which is called Sutta, which is focusing the mind and thoughts on spiritual practices. What do you do? What do you think about when you wake up in the morning? When you wake up in the morning, do you say, "Good morning, Grace, good morning, Father, good morning, Yeshua, good morning, Krishna, good morning, Buddha, good morning, what a blessed day"? Well, I do that every morning. My first thought when I wake up every morning is my gratitude and my bringing into grace into my day. What do you wake up on? What is your consciousness, mind, or thoughts going on through the day? Is that conversation with grace happening all the time? Is it transcendental in nature? Are you doing this as a transformative movement in life, or is it just virtuous act in periodic movements? This is what it's trying to say, the 4 paths to spiritual power. And I would agree with every single one of those, and there are many more if we could add on to those as well. On the truths the Buddha taught, the 4 meditations on the body, the sensations, on idea, logic, and virtue. Again, this fits with the 4 paths to spiritual power, is to concentrate meditative practice upon elevating through and out, beyond the body, expanding sensations, divine wisdom, which is idea and logic, allowing it to unveil from within to without, and the spiritual virtues of life, making them practiced. The 4-fold struggle against evil, which is prevent evil, extinguish evil, generate goodness, cultivate existing goodness. This speaks for itself. The 4 roads of holiness, which is Iddhi, is will, effort, thought, and searching. This can be directly translated to the 4 spiritual powers. You put the free will and intention, you put effort into what you wish to manifest, you put thought by projecting positive thought and thought towards grace itself, and you constantly seek expansion, expansion, expansion. 5 moral powers and 5 spiritual sense organs. They are faith, energy. Faith is really repetition, but it's also repetition is just faith. It's doing something knowing it will always become when you can't put your hand or your finger or your nose or your eye or your ear to it. You can't see it, you can't measure it, but you know it exists because it's always felt. It's like a net of inspiration coming to you. This is faith. This is what builds faith. Energy, spiritual energy, physical manifesting energy, and thought energy. Contemplation, which is meditation, silence, being at peace for some time and thinking of things beyond your daily practice of living, eating, consuming, accumulating, work, life, death. Go beyond that and accumulating, and obviously then allowing divine wisdom to enter from within to without. All of these things are absolutely true and accurate, and we should have those in our passage and journey, and they are actually ubiquitous within all of the scripture that we've gone through today. Repeat this mantra. The 7 types of wisdom. So Buddhism is speaking of the same, but concentrates on a detachment and an attachment as being the primary only cause. Well, it's kind of beyond. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. The 7 types of wisdom, with wisdom: energy, thought, meditation, study, joy, repose, which is integrating gnosis and being at rest. What is gnosis? Integrating what is being. Gnosis is the unveiling of information, the unveiling of wisdom. The repose is ingesting it and becoming it. Is to be at rest with it, be at peace and integrated with it. And tranquility of knowing what becomes here, knowing what is beyond, what it was before, and what it is now, whilst in this realm of duality in which we experience every day. This is the passage towards wisdom. Study is an important one. I want to just go before we move on, is to study everything. Remember the lotus flower? I say it has 9 petals for me, and I will be describing those 9 petals in the future. There are however many petals they need to be for you. But study scriptures, study all of them. Study everything that comes to your mind. Don't fix on one thing, because knowing and wisdom, gnosis, remember, comes from many things, not just one. One book, one person, one group, one country, one culture, one language. It's everything that exists on this earth has potentially something to offer you on your journey. The Noble Eightfold Path. Now this is talking about having the right view, the right thought, the right speech, the right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. What does this mean? Well, this is talking about the Buddhist view, Buddha's view of what is right view. Right view is practicing the Buddhist mantra, the Buddhist principles. Right thought is thinking the Buddhist thought processes of spirituality. saying the right things, doing the right action, and performing the right acts in livelihood and guiding livelihood, putting the effort in, mindfulness of what you're doing at every moment, every action, every word, every thought, every intention in microsecond of life, and concentration, be meditation, practice gratitude at all times. This again is a very good set series of what it says noble eightfold path, but could be applied beyond just spiritual Buddhist philosophy. All living things grow old, so seek enlightenment diligently. This is a very, very critical statement for me. We'll all go physically old, and our bodies and our minds will grow old before we realize they have. So it's start and embark upon that passage in earnest and seek enlightenment diligently, which means passionately as a transformative act. Never cease to seek enlightenment, because it will be unfolded through prayer, meditation, ask and give gratitude at all times. The 4 places which Buddhists should visit with reverence are the places where Buddha was born, and enlightened, which is the place where he was born, and then obviously under the banyan tree where he spent all his time. Set the wheel of Dhamma, which represents the perfection of Dhamma, the Buddha's teachings. You study the teachings. The rim of the wheel, so I put here, the rim of the wheel represents meditative concentration and mindfulness, which hold practice together. So there are many, when it's talking about Dharma, it is talking about perfection of the Dharma, the Buddhist teaching. There are many spokes to the center of the wheel. The center of the wheel is really you standing in there. You'll traverse many spokes towards that wheel, and the rim represents meditative concentration and mindfulness of every spoke that you traverse into the center. Buddhism and Buddhist teaching philosophy is just one of many spokes that you may wish to add to your wheel. It may not be. There could be others. Every passage to the center is different and unique to all of us, but there is a passage, and ultimately the end is the same for us all, the center. And in motion and passed away, on months free from emotion, reacting stoically to the death of Buddha. So we're going to the next sutta, which is the Mahasuddasana Sutta, which is a long word there. It says, on impermanence. This is talking about really the impermanence of material things. Moving from attachment to detachment of material things. On the impermanence of all things, how all things that exist must one day not exist. This is a good statement because we attached to matter, we attached to the physicality of life. This will always bring what we call duality and suffering, as Buddha describes it, because we are attached to the causality of rebirth, which is called suffering. Okay, Jnana Vasabha Sutta, the Jnana Vasabha Sutta. On Buddha, many disciples from the city of Nadika who made great spiritual attainment, resulting in the heavenly rebirth of a non-returner. This passage was short. I just pulled this one out as the only statement which I wanted to talk about. It was talking about a city where lots of disciples came, and they studied and followed all of the previous principles that Buddha was describing, and they achieved the state of a non-returner. That is fairly self-explanatory. That means they broke from the cycle of rebirth, removed themselves from the human cycle of rebirth or the human realm of experience. The Maha Govinda Sutta says, the story of the 5 crests. The Gandharva fairy, which is one of the astral forms in Buddhism, but also was mentioned actually in the Upanishads. The teachings of Buddha have led to the formation of many bright and wondrous new gods. Now, what does this mean? Buddha didn't create these gods. Others created these gods. They were creations to represent manifestations of Buddhism and of aspects of the Divine One, so humanity could understand it. On how there can be only can be only one Buddha in the world at one time. The conversion of the five crests, the Gandharva fairy, to the doctrine of the Buddha, and the five crests mastering of the teachings. So, I'm going to try to say this. Maha Sutta Patana Sutta. I won't say that again. On how to meditate. To become entirely purified, the way to entirely overcome suffering. The fourfold way to establish mindfulness is to contemplate while remaining alert. Is to basically put oneself into a theta state. You're alert, but you're in a state of a vibrational frequency, of theta state frequency, where you're alert, you're aware, but you're in a state in which you're receiving cosmic intelligence or tapping into the ether, if you like, of the cosmos and beyond. Be self-controlled and mindful in what passes through our mind. We can't always control this. We just have to let it pass through and try to dismiss it away, try to be silent as much as we can, but we can never completely silence our minds. And be mindful. Okay, beings free of cravings and the sorrows of the world, so being free of all those attachments. In the same way, contemplate feelings, contemplate thoughts and ideas. On where to meditate. A quiet forest, under a tree, in an empty room, anywhere really, where you find comfort and silence and peace. Be mindful of the impermanence of the body, of course. Inescapability of death for the corpse and for one's own body. On three types of sensations which are pleasant, neutral, or painful. Okay, mindful sensation created by lust. Freedom from lust, from hate, freedom from hate, intelligence and being not intelligence, distracted and focused, noble states, not noble states, mediocrity and ideals, liberation or non-liberation, being calm or not calm. So it's given you duality here. So you can have sensation of lust or freedom from lust. You can have hate or freedom from hate. You can have liberation or non-liberation. This is driven from your mindful state, your meditative practice, and all those stages towards spiritual enlightenment. On being mindful of thoughts, which is regarded as having ideas, by acknowledging them and considering them in relation to attachment of the five aggregates, which are called skandhas. So are our thoughts and feelings of spiritual perception? Are they of form? Are they of feelings? Are they of perception, of expanded perception and formation of expanding consciousness? And if they are thoughts, we have to just acknowledge them. We have to acknowledge all thoughts really, and sustain those that are taking us into a more expansive state, and just let other ones pass through quickly that are the mental monkey mind. On the Four Noble Truths: suffering, birth, old age, dying, grief, lamentation, ill, misery, despair, depression, failure to satisfy a want lead to the cycle of rebirth. The sources of suffering are craving, which are desires and wants. The nature of those cravings, arising of cravings from senses, as in touch and taste and the hearing and sight and smell. Contact and sensation cause attachments. So when we start attaching and having attachment to the physical material things, as we've described before, causes suffering, which here is regarded as a cycle of rebirth or the clinging. Sensation of suffering is the cessation of suffering, is the control of cravings, is the opposite of the previous list, is a control in sensations of the senses and attachments to and of all worldly things, or detachment to worldly things. The control of craving and craving generated by the six senses, of course, we've kind of captured that. On the Four Noble Truths, a noble eightfold path which leads to the sensation of suffering, the right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. All of that together allows one person to be in the passage to illumination, enlightenment, and wisdom. Okay, this is the final slide. Belief in the Four Noble Truths. On right thought, What is right thought? Well, aspiration to turn away from worldly life and follow the holy life. Right speech is refrain from lying, abuse, and ignorant talk. Right action is refrain from killing, stealing, sexual relations. Of course, these are obvious, but in the time when this was written, killing and stealing, sexual relations obviously is common now, but killing and stealing was probably equally as common. But obviously, right action means guiding one's actions, word, thoughts, and intentions through to the spirit, from the spirit to the energy of the spirit, rather than through the energy of the ego and the mind and the physical self. Right livelihood is refrain from anything that would be a wrong livelihood, which is effectively unjust. Anything that is unjust, anything that is self-serving, anything that oppresses and lies and is deceitful to others, without love, in other words. Right effort is to prevent and extinguish evil and generate good, cultivate good things. Right mindfulness is be free from cravings and worldly sorrows. Remember, worldly sorrows, what does this mean? Well, we're not responsible for what happens to this world, ultimately. We can do our part, and this is why every action, word, and intention, when driven through the spirit and the evolution of our soul into it, will drive action. It will drive us into having transformative action, not only in ourselves, but then our external action into this world, and that affects others, our communities, our families, our homes, our countries, and therefore the world. But the world trajectory as a whole is a culmination of everything. So we cannot attach to the movement of humanity or the humanity on this world or the passage of this world in the greater realm of all that is intended and the path in which everything follows. We have a contribution to make towards that, but we can only concentrate on our own, but not attach to the outcomes of the whole. Right concentration, which is free from lust and evil, and attainment of meditative status with his jhanas and joyful states. On the 4 meditative ecstasies, this was solitude, thought, and deliberation to joy. Again, this is the illumination passage towards wisdom and the unveiling of knowledge to within, without, which creates joy and beauty within. Concentration leading to suppression of thought, to calm and confidence, moving beyond joy into comfort, calm and awareness, and moving beyond calm, happiness, suffering to perfect mindfulness, mindful to impermanent thoughts. Again, this is talking about moving to a nothingness, all the way to nothingness. Okay, that was a very interesting passage, and again, second coming, which is described particularly in Christianity, is really just you. There isn't going to be a second coming of Christ. I can tell you that, and we can wait for all eternity. It won't happen. It's already happened. The message was given to us. It's up to us to understand what that message actually is and perform gnosis and expansion from it. Yeshua, Isha, Jesus will not be returning in physical form as Jesus again. It is to become what we are in whilst in body. We're being taught, we're being formed, we're being taught and guided towards moving towards the Holy Land of the Spirit, which is already inside of you, and moving our soul expression to that. And again, as Mahanji was saying, transformative, not virtue signaling acts and virtuous interludes into spirit. If it's not transformative and part of you, and you exhibit it all throughout your life, and you look at it, have it guide you in everything, and I mean everything, then it's not really transformative. It really must be so if this passage is one that's going to be true, and one that's going to be persistent, and one that's going to hold real energetic movement and spiritual movement towards the divine grace itself. Okay, I'll put the camera back on now and say thanks to everyone. I want to say thank you to everyone for listening to this. It's good, 50 minutes there. I hope you found that interesting. It was I enjoyed that part of this Nikaya. There's one more to come straight after this. I'll be finishing this Nikaya itself, and we're moving on to the next one in a later date. But I hope you enjoy this, and God bless you all. And thank you again for taking the time to listen to the video. Thank you.